Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
During my high school years, I was always the quiet kid. You know the type. Not athletic, kinda slim, and mostly kept to myself. I had a few friends, but I mainly focused on getting my work done and staying out of trouble. There were these two guys in my year who were absolute menaces. One was this stocky guy who thought he owned the place, and his sidekick who was basically his shadow. They were notorious for causing trouble, smoking behind the school, breaking equipment in science class, and just being general nuisances. Everyone, including the teachers, knew about their reputation. I had to share Spanish and music classes with them. The stocky one decided I was going to be his personal entertainment. For months, he'd throw stuff at me during class, fill my jacket pockets with trash, and steal things from my desk. Sometimes he'd shove me into walls or door frames when passing by. He would mock me by asking if I was too scared to do anything about it, while his sidekick would laugh and taunt me about crying to the teachers again. The teachers were useless. They'd either pretend not to see anything or give weak warnings that these guys completely ignored. It got so bad that the stocky guy started taking my bag and hiding it, or he'd sit on it and pretend he hadn't seen it, suggesting maybe I'd left it somewhere else. My family has this thing where we can hold our temper for a long time, but when we snap, we really snap. My dad and brother both had similar incidents where they'd finally had enough of being pushed around. The day everything changed was during music class. I had to use the bathroom, and when I came back, my fountain pen was missing. It wasn't just any pen, it was engraved with my name, and I'd had it for years. I heard snickering from the back of the class. The stocky guy was sitting there asking if I was looking for something, holding my pen and waving it around with this smug look on his face. When I asked for it back, he pretended he was going to return it, then quickly pulled it away when I reached for it. His sidekick shoved me backward. I called out to the teacher about him taking my pen, and she just lazily told him to give it back so they could continue with class. He refused, saying he thought he'd keep it instead. Then he started chewing on my pen. That was it. Something in my brain just switched off. I don't remember much of what happened next, but other students told me later that I completely lost it. I jumped from desk to desk to reach him, tackled him right off his chair, and started pounding on him. It took 3 students and the teacher to pull me off. We both ended up in the head teacher's office. I was worried I'd be expelled, but it turned out the stocky guy was already on thin ice for other incidents. He got suspended for a week. I just got a warning. Later I found out I'd given him bruised ribs, a damaged kidney, and bruises all over his chest that took weeks to heal. Neither of them showed up in my classes again. Word spread through the school that the quiet kid had finally snapped and put the bully in his place. My last year and a half of school was actually pretty peaceful after that. At our final assembly, when they were handing out achievement records, the entire year group started chanting my name. Apparently, I was the only one who got that kind of reaction. I still have that fountain pen, and I've never bothered to look up what happened to those 2 guys. Based on their attitudes back then, I doubt they went far in life, but that's not my problem anymore. This story took place back in the 80s in our small farming town, and it's still talked about to this day. I was working as a local veterinarian at the time, and I knew both people involved quite well since I treated the farmer's animals and had seen the woman around town with her son. The farmer was a quiet, hard-working man who'd been tending to his land for over 4 decades. His wife had passed away about 5 years prior, but he kept the farm running smoothly despite being in his 60s. He was known for helping folks out when they were down on their luck, often hiring seasonal workers even when he could manage alone. The woman who broke into his farm that night, let's call her Karen, had moved to our town about a year before the incident. She'd arrived with her young son, claiming they were starting fresh after leaving her abusive husband. At first, people tried to help her out. The local church offered food assistance, and several businesses tried to give her work. But Karen had a habit of causing scenes, demanding special treatment, and getting fired for her attitude. I remember treating one of the farmer's cows a week before the incident. He mentioned that someone had been stealing his eggs, but he hadn't caught them yet. He wasn't angry, just concerned about what would drive someone to steal. Then came that fateful night. I was actually the first person the farmer called after everything went down, and he told me the whole story while we waited for the ambulance. He told me how he'd heard rustling in the chicken coop around midnight. He grabbed his rifle thinking it might be the coyotes that had been causing problems lately, and went to check. He found Karen inside trying to stuff one of his prized laying hens into a bag. He commanded her to stop where she was. Karen immediately started begging, saying he didn't understand the situation. The farmer told her to put the chicken down. Karen started making excuses, claiming her son was hungry and that they hadn't eaten in days. She tried to justify her actions by pointing out how many chickens he had, suggesting he wouldn't even miss one. The farmer responded by telling her that if she needed food, she could have simply asked for help, as he was known to help people who asked. Karen became defensive, crying out that nobody helps them and that everyone in town hates them. When the farmer told her that he would have to call the police, that's when things went sideways. Karen lunged for the rifle. The farmer, being careful not to hurt her, tried to keep it away, but in the struggle, Karen managed to grab it. She turned to point it at him, but she had no idea how to handle a firearm. The rifle discharged, and the bullet grazed her ear, taking a good chunk of it with it. I arrived just before the ambulance and police. Karen was screaming about pressing charges, claiming the farmer had tried to murder her, but there were security cameras on the coop, something she hadn't noticed. The whole thing was caught on tape. Here's where it gets interesting. The responding officer recognized Karen immediately. Oh, and the abusive ex-husband story was fake. The starving son was actually living with his grandparents in another state. She'd lost custody years ago. The farmer, being the kind soul he is, still felt bad about her injury. He even offered to drop the charges if she'd agreed to get help. But Karen refused, kept threatening to sue, and ended up getting sentenced to 5 years for attempted armed assault, breaking and entering, and outstanding warrants. The farmer still runs his farm today, though his son helps out more now. He installed better security cameras after that incident, but he never stopped helping people in need. He just does background checks first now. I still get a chuckle whenever I drive past that chicken coop. The farmers around here started calling it Karen's beauty salon because that's where she got her free ear piercing. I'm a 23-year-old collector of trading cards, and I've been doing this since I was a kid. Recently, I started bonding with my youngest cousin over our shared hobby. He's only 9 and just getting into collecting, which honestly makes me happy since I get to mentor someone in something I'm passionate about. Last month, I bought a massive collection of cards from another collector who was leaving the hobby. When my cousin found out, his eyes lit up like Christmas came early. I promised him I'd sort through my doubles and give him some cards to boost his small collection. I told him that once I finished organizing everything, I'd help him build a proper collection. He got extremely excited and asked me when I'd be done. I explained it would take a week or two since I had thousands of cards to go through. He was so excited he'd ask about it every time he saw me. But before I could finish sorting my cards, something happened that made my blood boil. My cousin's older brother, who's 12, had invited his friend over to play video games. While my older cousin went to grab some snacks, his friend decided to snoop around their room. This kid found my little cousin's card collection and emptied all the card sleeves, stealing not just the cards but also $20 from my older cousin's sock drawer. They didn't realize anything was missing until my little cousin came home from his aunt's house, excited to add some new cards he'd just gotten. His scream could be heard throughout the building. His brother ran to check on him and found the empty binder. What happened next was pure chaos. My older cousin stormed out of their apartment and walked straight to his friend's place. Their oldest brother had to follow him to make sure things didn't get too out of hand. When the thief opened his door, my older cousin punched him right in the face. It took their big brother's strength to pull him off the kid. My older cousin yelled at the thief, demanding he return the stolen cards. The thief denied knowing anything about them. My older cousin then threatened to beat the truth out of him. When their mom tried to resolve the situation with the thief's mother, She got nowhere. The woman refused to even look for the cards, claiming there was no proof they belonged to my cousin. That's when I remembered something perfect for revenge. A few months back, I'd bought some counterfeit cards online to learn how to spot fakes. They looked incredibly real to untrained eyes, perfect holographic rares that would make any collector drool. I let my aunt and little cousin in on my plan. We put the fake cards in my cousin's card sleeves and had him spread the word about his amazing new collection. It didn't take long for the thief to hear about it. He showed up at their apartment 2 days later carrying my cousin's original cards bound with a rubber band, which made me cringe. That's no way to treat cards. The thief asked about the rare cards he'd heard about. My cousin confirmed that I had bought some packs and given them to him. When my cousin showed him the fake holographic cards, the thief's eyes nearly popped out of his head. He immediately pulled out the stolen cards. The thief offered to trade all the stolen cards for the rare ones. My cousin pointed out that the cards weren't in very good condition and weren't even mint. The thief then offered to add $20 to the deal. When my cousin hesitated, the thief ran home and came back with another $20. He eagerly offered $40 and all the cards for the rare ones. My cousin turned to me with a perfectly practiced expression, asking if I thought $40 and the cards were enough for the rare ones. I reminded him that he had 7 ultra-rare hollows, but said it was his choice since I had given them to him. The thief asked how long my cousin had been collecting. My cousin told him it had only been a few months. After a moment of consideration, my cousin agreed to the deal. The exchange was made and the thief practically skipped away with his precious new cards. The next day at school, he tried showing off his incredible trades, only for one of his friends to point out they were fake. When he tried ripping one card to check, it revealed cheap cardboard instead of the proper card stock. He came back demanding a refund, but we used his own mother's words against him. No proof. His mom tried to complain to my aunt, but got exactly the same response she'd given us about the stolen cards. The thief not only lost the stolen cards and his $40, but also his reputation. Word spread quickly about what he'd done, and none of the kids in the building would hang out with him anymore. My older cousin got his $20 back, and my little cousin got his original collection back, plus $20 for his trouble. The thief and his mom moved out 3 months later. Apparently, having everyone in the building know your kid is a thief and you enable it wasn't very comfortable for them. My story starts with my mom's background. She grew up in this tiny farming village. We're talking about a place with barely 100 people. Her family wasn't exactly popular there due to some choices her parents and older brothers made. She had it rough in school, getting bullied not just by students, but even by teachers and the principal. As soon as she could, she got out of there and spent over 20 years living overseas. That's where she met my dad, a Canadian guy, and had me and my little brother. Life was going fine until family illness forced us to move back to her home country. Then came my grandfather's death, followed by my parents' messy divorce. We ended up having no choice but to move into a house just outside that same village my mom grew up in, about 30 minutes from the main town. And guess what? My brother and I had to attend the same primary school where my mom had all those bad experiences. Now, picture this. A small school with around 90 to 100 students, 1 classroom per year. I joined in year 2 while my brother was still too young for school. Being the new kid with a Canadian accent in a small town where everyone knew about my mom's family. Yeah, it wasn't great. The kids whose parents had bullied my mom were now bullying me. Real classy, right? My teacher that year was something else. Let's call her the bitter teacher. If I was quietly doing my work or reading, she'd single me out. She would constantly ask me why I wasn't participating more in class discussions. When I tried to explain that I was just trying to finish the assignment she gave us, she would accuse me of being antisocial and demand that I engage more with the class. She'd nitpick everything I did in a way she didn't do with other students. Later, I found out why she was the same teacher my mom had problems with 30 years ago. Talk about holding a grudge. Fast forward 4 years. I'm in my final year, known among the staff as the responsible kid. I even turned in a $50 note I found instead of keeping it. I was in charge of my bus line, making sure everyone was accounted for before we boarded. Our line was right next to bitter teacher's classroom. One day, I noticed a younger kid, probably 7 or 8, crying in line. Being the person I am, I went to check on him. I asked him what was wrong and if he was okay. Through his sniffles, he explained that he missed his mom, who had been away for work all week. I was just about to tell him a funny story to cheer him up when bitter teacher came storming out of her classroom. She immediately accused me of making the kid cry. When I tried to explain that I was just trying to help, she wouldn't listen. Even when the little kid himself spoke up and said I was being nice to him, she ignored us both. Instead, she gave me detention for the next day, telling me I had to spend all lunch break in her classroom. Nothing we said made any difference. The next day I showed up for detention and just read my book quietly. This clearly annoyed her because she wanted me to suffer. Halfway through, the principal stopped by and was shocked to see me there. She slipped me a note to come see her after lunch. In the principal's office, she asked me to explain exactly what had happened. I told her how I was just trying to comfort the crying kid, but the bitter teacher wouldn't listen to either of us when we tried to explain. She listened carefully and then sent me back to class. Here's where it gets good. At the end of the week assembly, with all the students, teachers, and even some parents present, the principal made bitter teacher stand up. She had to apologize to me publicly, but it wasn't just for the wrongful detention. The principal made her admit to her pattern of targeting me because of her history with my mom, which she had apparently denied when confronted initially. The bitter teacher looked like she was in physical pain as she had to apologize for giving me an unjust detention. There was a long, awkward pause before she finally admitted to letting her past prejudices affect how she treated me, acknowledging that it was unprofessional and wrong of her. She looked like she'd swallowed a lemon whole. After that, she not only left me alone but also stayed clear of my little brother when he started school. Word got around the village about what happened, and some other parents came forward about how she treated their kids unfairly too, and she chose to retire early the following year. My mom's reaction when I told her, she laughed so hard she cried. She said it was better than any revenge she could have planned herself. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.